Hello everyone, Flare here. Today we'll be discussing a rather heavy vehicle. So, let's get into it. The E100 super heavy tank is one of the most fascinating tanks of Nazi Germany. While it does not have near mythical combat legends of the tigers or the sheer weight of the mouse, its partially built hull was impressive enough to cement it into tank history for decades to come. The obscurity and nature of the project has resulted in a vast number of speculatory conversions and what-if modifications. One of these gray areas is the Sturmgeschütz E100, a short-lived plan of converting the E100 into an assault gun. Unfortunately, there are no remaining blueprints of the layout, which has left the appearance of this vehicle up to much debate. The most well-known representation is that with a rear-mounted casemate, made famous by Wargaming's game World of Tanks. Wargaming used the Sturmgeschütz to fill in their Tier 10 German tank destroyer line in World of Tanks. Due to the popularity that the game enjoyed throughout the 2010s, World of Tanks quickly became a centerpiece for information and an introduction to tanks for most amateur tank enthusiasts, including myself, making the wrongly named Jagdpanzer E100 what most think of when mentioning a E100-based self-propelled gun. World of Tanks provides a short but somewhat inaccurate bit of historical information on the vehicle. The E100 was conceived as the basis for a self-propelled gun, an anti-aircraft vehicle, and a tank destroyer. However, development was never started. There were never any plans to build an anti-aircraft vehicle based on the E100 hull, or the mouse, for that matter. Many such designs have appeared online, but they are fake. There were also never any plans to make an artillery self-propelled gun based on the E100, although the fake vehicle also made it into the game in the form of the Geschützwagen E100. There was work made by Krupp and Porsche on an enclosed, direct-firing self-propelled gun, but that particular vehicle was meant to be a Sturmgeschütz, or assault gun, and not a Jagdpanzer, or tank destroyer. This was called the 15-17 cm Sturmgeschütz E100 Fahrgestell, 15-17 cm assault gun on E100 chassis. The project started on 9th of May 1944 when Porsche and Krupp representatives met to discuss the issue of a new heavy assault gun. Krupp showed plans for mounting either a 15 cm L63 or a 17 cm L53 gun inside a fixed casement on a mouse chassis. This was in competition to what another firm, Adler, had planned, which was to mount these guns inside a fixed casement, but on an E100 chassis. Unfortunately, the only surviving blueprints from this program is one showing the 150mm gun mount, leaving the position of the casemate to much debate. The likelihood that this program would have transformed into a Jagdpanzer E100 is not at all impossible if the program would have continued. While the name is unhistorical, many German Jagdpanzers started their life as Sturmgeschütz, such as Ferdinand, Jagdpanzer IV, Jagdpanther, and Jagdtiger. The difference between a Sturmgeschütz and a Jagdpanzer was not a matter of construction or shape, but a matter of deployment and doctrine. However, the Sturmgeschütz E100 program was terminated before the Panzerwaffe could steal it from a Sturmartillerie. In World of Tanks, the Jagdpanzer E100 has a large, thickly armored superstructure at the back of the hull, in a similar fashion to that of the Ferdinand, with the engine compartment being moved towards the middle of the vehicle. The crew consists of 6 men, a commander, a driver, a gunner, a radio operator, and 2 loaders. It is armed with a 17 cm pack, most likely inspired from the real 17 cm Stuke L53 gun. It can carry 24 170mm rounds and reload a shell in around 25 seconds. The engine is a Maybach Nias project with a 1,200 horsepower output, allowing the 134-ton vehicle to reach a maximum speed of 30 kilometers an hour. It is crucial to note that these numbers always change in attempts by the game developers to balance the vehicle within the game environment, and are often quite far from reality, but understandable from a gaming point of view. The Maybach Neues Projekt name is most likely fictional, but there was actually a 1200 horsepower engine for the E100. This was called the HL234, a supercharged variant of the HL230. It was to be coupled to an 8-speed mythical transmission. However, with these components, Adler moved the transmission and the drive sprocket to the back, meaning that on the E100 tank version, the turret was moved forwards, requiring a longer hull. A very different look to the original E100. Sadly though, Adler destroyed their plans at the end of the war to avoid capture. A rear transmission would also make it incompatible with a rear-mounted casemate possibility for the Sturmgeschütz. On the Jagdpanzer E100, the engine has been moved to the middle of the vehicle in order to make room for the superstructure at the rear. At the rear left on top of the superstructure, a small turret was added, with what seems like a lower caliber autocannon or heavy machine gun. Within the game, it does not operate. Such an idea is sensible for a fixed casemate vehicle its size in order to protect the vulnerable rear and left side. The tank destroyer in World of Tanks is extremely well armored, with 250 mm at the front of the superstructure and 150 mm towards the sides and rear. However, this along with the heavy gun breech and ammunition would have placed considerable strain on the rear suspension. While the rear armor thickness for the Sturmgeschütz is unknown, their surviving mantelet blueprints indicate that the rounded ball mount behind the mantelet was around 120 mm thick. The thick, angled front plate of the casemate would be around 200 mm thick. Side and rear armor of the casemate is up to speculation, but they would likely have been rather thin, around 80 mm, to keep the weight down and eliminate stress for the rear wheels, as was done on the real E100 turret. In World of Tanks, the Jagdpanzer E100 has a 17 cm pack, inspired from the 17 cm Stug L53 gun. Krupp wanted to avoid using this gun as much as possible on the heavy Sturmgeschütz design, mainly because of its weight, but also the size of the breech and ammunition, which required a large casemate. On 29th of April 1944, General Heinz Guderian requested that the penetration should be 200 mm at 4,000 meters. Essentially, this would have meant being able to knock out even the heaviest of Allied tanks from a range of 4 kilometers. That is, unless if I'm greatly mistaken, still a fairly impressive feat given the comparative levels of armor and the technology at the time. Unfortunately, because most of the information around the 17 cm L53 is based on salvaged papers, data about its performance and shells are scarce. The placement of a rear casemate on the E100 would come with a host of mechanical challenges, none of which would be possible for Germany to manage at the time. According to former Wargaming historian Yuri Pashulok, the Combined Intelligence Objectives Subcommittee claimed that the transmission and drive sprockets were moved to the rear. Moving the engine to the middle of the tank would be a complex task, but not impossible. The placement of a well-armored casemate so far back would have moved a great deal of weight towards the rear wheels, but due to the heavy gun and thick armor resting on the center wheels, this might have balanced out. This did have the advantage of shortening the overhang of the gun over the hull, reducing problems in narrow spaces, such as streets and forests. The Soviet Su-100, a much smaller vehicle, experienced such issues. The heat from the engine would distort the view of the gunner and could potentially warp the gun, another issue found with many rear casemate tank destroyers. There would be a host of mechanical changes to the E-100 hull that had to be made, increasing production time and cost. These would be adjusting transmission and drivetrain, adjusting the suspension to the different balance point, changing air intake and exhaust positions, etc., etc. This entire process had already been encountered in the Jagdpanzer program. There was actually a proposal of having the Jagdpanzer casemate in the rear of the hull, and the engine in the middle. the Jäger B, but issues stated above, among others, led to a central casemate for the Jagdpanzer to be chosen. In recent years, model kit companies have even released models in 1:72 or 1:35 scale of the Jagdpanzer E100, further cementing the rear-mounted casemate alternative as the most popular one. So, to conclude this article, veteran historians and casual tank enthusiasts have been discussing this vehicle for years, and we may never know for sure how a tank destroyer or assault gun based on the E100 would have looked like. It remains one of the many fascinating and impressive projects to come out of Germany in the Second World War, alongside the similar project for the Maus and vehicles like such as the Kugelpanzer. It is the simple fact that so little is known about it that allows one's imagination to open up. The details that are known are also simply sensational, from the large gun to the heavy armor of the E100. However, it should be remembered that behind these impressive numbers, equally impressive mechanical and engineering problems existed, which were not solved by the Germans ever, even for their lighter vehicles. The Sturmgeschütz E100's appearance in Wargaming's video game, even under a false name, only boosted its fame within the tank community. So, and that's it for this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscription. You can find more information relating to the Jagdpanzer E100 in the full article, which is linked in the description below. If you like what we are doing and want to let us continue working on these videos, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be allocated to improving our articles and videos for you. Until next time, keep us in your sights.